this is actually a good transition from vector control and talking about how to protect your homes, prevent your homes, then what to do about trapping and get rid of them. And you talked about having to hire sort of pest control professionals on that. Here we have somebody who can tell you all about that.
Move with my little bag of tricks over
Yes.
here. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I normally don't do this in front of a forum like this, but I've done a lot of rodent work over the years. And Bob touched on a lot of points there as far as identifying. You know, inspection is probably the biggest key. And that's the best way that you can avoid eventually trapping. I don't advocate using poisons, anything like that, because that's going to lead to additional problems, especially if you haven't sealed your home. You're going to have the rodent die inside. It's kind of an old tale that they want to go outside for water or get a drink and die there. You know, you can't see it. That doesn't happen. They're very paranoid creatures. They know their habitat very well. They memorize their route every night. They can see it in the dark, something new introduced. They'll avoid it for a while, possibly. So what happens, they'll go down in a wall void where they don't have to watch their back. Die there, and you start getting maybe big green bottle flies. You ever see the flies flying in your house? That type of thing, or maggots falling out of the ceiling. So exclusion is really important. And how we talked about of course, the foundation vent is really a big entry point. You'll get, people will have it for cable television, phone lines, everything else. You can make a very small hole here, they make a large one. And then you see the smudge marks. Same thing happens with that bird's nest. That is probably the secondary most common entry point. The rat goes up there looking to get out of the for shelter, get out of the rain, turns around and sees this big hole, and he's got your rat. So you really want to inspect those areas. I'm coming as a pest control company, but not to advertise. We're here to tell you first how to do it yourself.
Stay by the microphone when you're talking.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Is that not projecting then? Okay. Yeah, I'm just coming here really to help you do this yourself, if that's the approach you'd like to take. Because there are many things you can do, as long as you're willing to get up on ladders and things like that. The house you showed there with all the rodents on the counter, I just was at one like that, which unfortunately was an elderly man who finally went into assisted living, but he had been living like that for almost a year. And they were in his bed. It was, they had a path going probably 4 feet down the hall of urine and droppings. And the thing is, you can see the droppings, but you can't see the urine. And if you go with the black light, it will fluoresce. It'll all just glow. If you get up in your attic, you can see where they've been. Touching again upon trimming back your bushes, which provide access, very important. Thinning out the shrubs, picking up your fallen fruit. They'll drink out of your swimming pool. They will drink out of the bird baths, if you put those there as well. The chlorine doesn't seem to bother them in the pool. Sometimes people will find them in their filter, where they've fallen in at that point. You want to make it unattractive to them, and sealing your home is the important part. When you have holes in these vents, this is also the attic vent that goes up above. When you have those, you can go down to the hardware store, you can buy, this is hardware cloth. Don't buy aluminum screening. They'll eat right through that. So you put the hardware cloth, you cut it, and you can get some little extensions as you cut this, and you can bend it back with some needle nose pliers and make a clean seal. And that's really important around pipes, where you have pipes going in and out. You can't just replace the whole vent. If you just have a hole in your vent, I'd advise replacing the vent. Your home's going to look nicer. Just get a new one. They're very inexpensive to put in. Some people use foam. Some companies use foam. They'll find a hole, and that's all they'll do is put expansion foam. But I've seen many times where the rodents have eaten right through the foam. If you're trying to seal an area for drafts as well, you can use foam. But first, put in the hardware cloth. Then you put the foam. It goes in there. They go to bite through it. It's almost like a little reinforcement here, a little rebar for the foam. This type of gun you can pick up at hardware stores. Hilti makes them as well. Unfortunately, with the cans, if you've used it before, you open up a can, you use it one thing, it grows like a gigantic mushroom and looks unattractive as it turns brown over the years. You can cut that if you want to down the road and paint it. Or with a gun like this, you can dial in a very small bead and make a very neat application. So something that works very nice. And the nice thing is you keep the material. That can, once you've opened it, you might as well just throw it away because it will not be usable again. We had a question about these emitters. Don't waste your money. McDonald's did a study on them. McDonald's restaurants are having a rodent problem. And so they did a study and they found out that rodents really have the same hearing frequency as people. And so it's just kind of, they're expensive and you're wasting electricity just to run these things. They do not deter them, nor do they deter cockroaches, anything else, any other pest. I am not an advocate of glue boards. The only time I could ever see is if you had no other choice and maybe an area like a preschool, somewhere where there's small children, where you cannot take a chance of using any type of a snap trap. They work great for monitoring insects, things like that, but they're incredibly inhumane. I mean, it's just a horrible way to die, so I wouldn't use these. Ms. Bushnell had a very nice article. I agreed with a lot of the things she said in there, although for us as professionals, we cannot trap animals and re-release them. For a long time, there was a lot of issues about animal trapping before, and we weren't required to have a trapping license even at that time. And even for rodents, we don't have to. But for all the feral animals, the raccoons, the possums that come in your yard, I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains, so I used to take them up there. I felt bad. I didn't want to kill them, so I'd re-release them. Because none of the agencies would give you a straight answer what to do about it. But they finally have come upon a policy, and it makes sense. You could be introducing a sick animal into an environment, for one thing. You're stressing them, transporting them. And another thing is that when they enter that environment, things are already established. So they're going to have to fight just to survive, you know. So now we have to euthanize them on site at your home, and you're responsible for disposing of them. So that's just the way it goes now. Same thing with, so if we live trap a rat, we would probably use it, either put it in a bag and do it that way, which you can do as well. But re-releasing them in your yard, if you haven't caught every entry point in your home, they're going to be back, you know. So what we do typically is we seal the house and we find every entry point we possibly can. But as Bob said, sometimes you can have some remaining animals inside, and the last thing you want for them to do is to starve to death or die in there. So we do use traps. I don't use these. Rats don't think that's Swiss cheese. This big yellow. We use the old Victor trap, and I often will just super glue a walnut on it. A very small piece of walnut. The peanut butter, that cotton ball is an interesting idea though too. I like that. But otherwise, I've had them very delicately lick the peanut butter right off, and your trap is left there still set. So you super glue a small piece of walnut. He has to work on it. Again, like Bob was showing you, you want to have it, they like to have their whiskers touching one side of the wall as they move around your attic on their route. So you put this where the business end is next to the wall. And sometimes if you want to, you can give them a few free meals. You know, you can let them feel comfortable because again, you're introducing something new into their environment. And if you're around rats that have been around a lot of trapping, they will become trap shy at that point. And they will avoid it. They've seen other animals caught in it, so they may avoid it. So on cases then, we have used this. This is one's made by Victor. There's another one called a rat zapper. They even have them, if you don't feel comfortable climbing up in your attic, they even have it with a little transmitter. So you have a little panel down below. It'll show you when it's been triggered. But again, this you typically pre-bait it with some walnuts, a little cat food, and it has a battery. And when they first made them, they were kind of inhumane because they didn't understand that the rats are resuscitating themselves. They get one shock, and then they come back. So now it does actually kind of pulse, but it does kill them very quickly. And there's no, you're not dismembering them or doing anything. It's very easy for you to remove them. You simply can go and empty it like that. There's no blood. There's nothing there. They just are lying there. Pardon? This is made by Victor's. Well, you can get this at Osh for $49.95. The gentleman here have really talked about everything. Pretty much they've covered it. So I just wanted to give you some ideas along those lines. With our business, one of the key things we do, every service we do, is to inspect your house, because things change. All of a sudden you decided to add that HD system to your home and new cables come in or something has changed. So we advise our customers about potential problems. You'll be surprised how many times people ignore it over and over again. So I made a little sheet, and I'll leave some of these up here, reasons that you want to seal up your home. Just 25% of all the unidentifiable fires of unknown origin were started by rats that were chewing on electrical wires up in your attic in your home. So that's basically what I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Lots of questions now. Trying to spur them all to the floor here. Ginger, right here.
What about putting steel wool around your pipes or filling in holes with steel wool?
You can, but steel wool tends to rust. You'll see that it breaks down, becomes very brittle after a period of time, and it's kind of unattractive as well. But yeah, you can wedge it in. There is also a product that's made out of copper called Stuff It. You can get that, and that will not corrode. So you can put that in its place. It is irritable to them. So
That's orchard too.
I've seen it. I don't know if I've seen it at Orchard. You can get that product online, certainly. You can get Stuff It.
You get bronze wool.
Pardon?
You get bronze wool.
Bronze wool.
Bronze wool?
Yeah.
Sure.
That works just as well.
Yeah, and that won't tarnish it. Well, it'll tarnish, but it won't rust, which is the idea. Yes.
What about the peppermint oil and that sort of thing?
Well, the problem with many natural, I use peppermint oil, rosemary oil, and a botanical insecticide, which is great because it only works on a little neuroreceptor called octopamine, which is only found in insects. So it's great to use around people and pets. Mammals are not affected. But a lot of the home methods at times work, and then there can be, many times they don't. It can be a deterrent for a while, but the key is to go ahead and seal up that hole. Don't just try and keep them out of there. Keep them out permanently, or you're going to have an ongoing problem. And sometimes, like that hole gets a little bigger from the rat, and then that rat attracts the feral cat, which makes it a little bigger, who goes under there. Perhaps has a litter, or you have another animal, possums. We have a lot of times will go under there, have a litter. Then the parent goes out, gets trapped outside, and you have the young ones which die under your house, and you have a horrendous flea problem. We've had that before happen, and sometimes they're feeling sick. They get up into the area around the bathtub. I had this flea job. We've taken care of the fleas, but they still had them, and they had them in the bathroom, and we couldn't figure it out. And so, sure enough, we had a sawzall through the wall, and here was a raccoon that had crawled up there and died. And again, the house wasn't sealed properly. And that includes if you have an older home that has, the crawl space is accessible from the exterior. You want to make sure, you don't want to just look at the top of that and see that it's sealed. You don't look at all the sides and the edges and make sure it fits properly. And if you have the skills to put a new, patch on there, please do. But if you don't, pay to have a handyman or someone come take care of that for you.
So you here?
Is this seasonal? Is there a certain time?
Well, people typically notice the activity more as we get into winter, fall and winter, because the animals are looking for shelter. And so that's when you go to bed at night and you start hearing this little gnawing or this running across your ceiling. But they will go under the house because it's cool, and they'll stay there in the summer. It's still kind of nice, and you can have some leaky plumbing, which provides a little moisture and things like that. So, but yeah, typically fall, winter is when they are in your home. Yes?
Right now, I think I'm free of rats, but in the summertime, I would come home late and no lights on, and I hear them wrestle in this, trellis, like hanging next to my house.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going up into the bird's nest up the roof. And another time I had flies all over my bay window in the middle of winter.
Mm-hmm.
15 flies. I killed
Real
all
slow
of them.
flying and
Yeah.
easy to kill.
I killed them all, and I thought, oh, there's a dead rat up there. So it took about 2 weeks to get rid of those flies. They would come out once a day.
Yeah.
And then, out of desperation, I got a super soaker. And I just had it, and I went up into the attic, and I'm afraid of, and I loaded it up with pine sol, and I say that is really good, because I think it replicates big cat urine. I listen to the garden shows,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think, what smells like that?
Another,
So I get this thing out, I shot all around the attic, and a rat ran right up me. So he did not like it.
well, already. This gentleman back here.
What's the most efficient way of keeping the rats out of fruit trees?
Out of fruit trees, that is very difficult because, yeah, you're going to get them up in the orchards. You can use some netting. I've seen that somewhat effective. You're really like walking on it at times as they bounce around. It's funny when David was talking about the dusky-footed wood rat. My first experience, I lived in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I was using a gardener. I have quite a large garden. And I came home one day, and I noticed this bush was just horribly pruned. That looks terrible. What is this guy doing? And I asked him, I said, that wasn't me. I said, come on, it's got these nice 45-degree angle cuts on it. And then another plant later down the road was, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on at that. Maybe he's not being straight with me or something, but I mean, it was brutally pruned. And so I went on the internet actually at the time, and I had my property kind of deer fenced with this Benner deer fence, and I knew it wasn't deer, and deer also make a different, they don't have front teeth, they make a different type of damage. And sure enough, it was a dusky-footed wood rat, that was going up there. I went out at night and got them running around. They're fascinating creatures, by the way, they really are. But I would try that with the trees, and also keep it maybe away from the house, keep things pruned back, definitely. And pick your fruit when it's ripe.
Gentleman right here.
Yes.
What are your recommendations for sealing garage doors, which I think are particularly hard to...
I forgot. I was going to mention that. That's very good, especially if you have one of the newer doors which are sectional and they go up. They close pretty well. They're pretty tight on the sides. Sometimes over a period of time, the bottom little weather stripping can deteriorate. Also, you live here in an area, as I do, where the ground tends to shift at times. So maybe it isn't quite as level under that garage door as it used to be. I would call at that point a garage door, overhead garage door company to have them make some adjustments. But the other door you want to pay attention to is the side door on your garage. Often people have an attached garage to their house, and there'll be a gap. The best way is go in the daytime, turn all the lights off in your garage, and just look at any daylight you start seeing, because it's going to glow right through there. There's often gaps right underneath that door. So you want to put a threshold, but don't just buy one of those little rubber door sweeps. They'll lead through that. The best type to get is it's an interlocking door sweep. Again, at Orchard, Home Depot, any place like that. There's a little more involved in installing it, but what it basically has is a groove on the threshold below, and then the piece that goes on the door is a tongue, and they interlock. And that will keep any pest from getting into your garage that way.
Gentleman right here.
With wood rats and fruit trees, would a sheet metal around the trunk keep them? How high can the rats jump?
They're great athletes. They really are. I mean, I've seen them go up stucco. Okay, I've seen them climb that. I know a friend of mine has a palm tree. He did that. And he did it, kept spacing it. Fruit trees a little tougher. They're usually not as tall. Yeah, they're pretty good athletes. If you have nothing else around it, but you have to be very careful how that goes around the tree. You don't want to damage the trunk of your tree as well. And because they are fragile, you don't want to girdle anything every time you're tying things back. I don't really know what to tell you as far as how high that goes. And there is no 100% foolproof method that I know of.
Get a bunch of cats.
Yeah?
There's a lady back here.
Yes.
How fast they breed?
Pardon me?
How fast they breed?
Oh, boy, you guys can help me a little rapidly. I think a juvenile can start within, it's a matter of weeks, can start having babies. And the litters can be 6 to 8, something like that? Yeah. I mean, it can expound potentially rapidly. You can have a problem going. And
I think boy rats usually have a limit of 2 or 3.
is that right? Okay. But again, the wood rat is not going to be a home invader as much. They're fascinating how they have this multi-chambered nest too, how they have the food that's toxic now and going to be safer to eat later. I mean, they're just amazing. But they typically don't. I've never experienced them in a house, in a structure.
Later, right here. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Where I grew up, all the bare dirt under the house behind the basement was covered with cement, and that was called rat proofing. Does that work?
I don't know, rat proofing from keeping them from digging, is that the theory? I guess if you're thinking of a Norway rat, which could, over in Willow Glen area, you see them digging down in those areas, perhaps it could. It wouldn't do anything if you have broken vents. It's not going to prevent any, of them. And also it would become, I think, a moisture issue. If you had any problems with moisture under your house and you started sealing it like that, it would start wicking to the sides of your foundation and things. I don't think I really advise doing that. Seal your home up well is the key.
John, all right.
What's an effective way of getting rid of gophers in
There's a couple methods, okay? There's certainly a couple of methods. There's a lot of methods, but first of all, as opposed to rats, which do not mind your human scent, gophers do. So you need to wear gloves if you're going to trap for a gopher. And the old Maccabee gopher trap that was invented in Los Gatos many years ago is still a very effective tool. We have another product we use, all of the other ones, putting your exhaust from your car down there, all these little bombs, they may work once in a while, but typically they catch that chemical smell and they'll slam up a dirt wall right there. Running your hose down there, you're wasting water. They have multi-chambered dens where they're sitting up above watching the water run away. I mean, it's pretty ineffective unless you catch them right at the beginning where they haven't had a chance to do that. We use the product at times where they're really bad, and especially I have a gentleman who had a dam situation that the face of his earthen dam was in danger of being undermined. We use it's a product called humotoxin. It's a registered material. You have to have a special license to apply it. I think the only reason it works it's a little pellet that goes down into the burrow, and it is activated by moisture, by water, and so it's kind of seasonally when you can use it. But it smells like garlic, and I've asked a number of experts at different seminars about it, and that kind of seems to be the consensus, that it has this little more natural scent that at first they are not aware of. But that is nothing that, unless you go ahead and got an ag license, that's the only way you could apply it yourself.
Let's take the last couple of questions, and then you're free to ask people after we break up. We'll get people out here on time. So I've got one question here. Any other questions? Okay, we'll take the last question right here.
I'm concerned about the safety of clearing out the horrendous collection of droppings under my house. How do I protect against, infection with all?
Yeah, that is hazardous material. You're exactly right. We do some of it. There is another company, although last time I tried to call them, I wasn't giving an answer, which made me a little worried, that specializes in hazardous material. There's another company called Service Tech that does that. And they basically wear a hazmat uniform and remove it. We have special vacuums for certain situations that we use with the HEPA filters. They were designed for the pest control industry. But they do not work if you're talking about insulation up in your attic, where they, because they have not only these droppings, but the urine is in all of that insulation as well. You really want to get that removed, and that would be done by a professional company that first could remove it, and then have another roofing company put in the insulation. It's not an inexpensive process.
In a case like that, isn't the the feces and urine hazardous for a limited amount of time? I mean, if you truly excluded all the animals, would it
Yeah, I think.
absolutely necessary to just remove, a 10-year-old dog?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm at the attic with that stuff all the time. But new stuff, and if it's been there for a while, and the problem is that when they're talking about the hantavirus, it was the urine from the deer mouse, which became particleized, and then attached itself to the lungs, And I'm sure you've all heard about that case down in the Four Corners area where those young people, young healthy people were putting out some barns and died within 48 hours from it, But, yeah, I think the sitting up, it's kind of like asbestos in some ways, Asbestos, until you start cutting it and getting it airborne, if it's lying there, it's pretty inert. But it's when you start getting the particles in the air that it's an issue. But some people feel more comfortable pulling it out, and I probably wouldn't mind if it was a bad infestation.
So we have a number of handouts. I think we're trying to get them all arranged. They have the handouts on the back table so you can pick up things on your way out. First, I'd like to give our three speakers a really nice thank you.